Okay, this is the 52nd meeting of Go Green Illinois, and we're delighted to welcome all of you to our meeting. I am Beth Drucker, the president of Go Green Wilmette, and I co-facilitate this group with Kim Stone. Kim, if you could wave. Kim is a councilwoman in Highland Park, and we founded this group in 2013 and have been hosting 6 meetings a year ever since. As many of you know, we used to meet at the Botanic Gardens and had to limit the size of our group. Now we're able to do this on Zoom, and our group has geographically expanded significantly, including places like Brookfield, Glen Ellen, Arlington Heights, and some other far-flung communities that are now joining us. The topic for the meeting today is energy efficiency and electrification, moving your community away from fossil fuels. Many of us in our environmental organizations are torn between doing local things and also worrying about larger global issues, climate change, of course, being the most important one of them. It's very important that we do focus on energy, because that is probably the most important issue that we all have to address and make our contributions from our communities. So with that, I just wanted to say a couple of announcements, because there are some important programs related to this that we want to make sure that you all know. If you do check the calendar on the Go Green, you can check the posts on the Go Green Illinois website, and people do post programs, but a couple that we want to make sure you know about. There is a program tomorrow at 1 p.m. on climate change. It's being hosted primarily by colleagues in Glencoe, but they have libraries from about 12 different communities that are involved with that. That is with Don Wubbles, who is a well-regarded climate scientist, who's going to do that program tomorrow at 1 p.m. There's another program January 20th called Nature Speaks, the epic history of the climate crisis. That's on the 20th at 1 p.m. The link of that should also be on the Go Green Illinois website. Also wanted to mention that many of our communities are now working together on a governmental level to address issues with gas-powered leaf blowers. If your community is not part of that group, they can contact Highland Park's village manager to be asked to included in that working group. They are hoping that they can collaborate and put together restrictions that are consistent across suburbs, which will make it much easier to enforce. There's also a lot of progress with school bus electrification, and the Environmental Law and Policy Center is doing much to move that ahead. And so keep in mind that your school district can add to the clamor for electric buses if you contact your school district or the service that provides busing for your community. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Kim Stone, who is going to announce the program and our speakers. Kim, thank you very much.
Thanks, Beth. For those who are new, some of you have already done so, but please put your community name in the chat so that we know where you're from, and welcome. So as Beth said, we're going to be talking about energy efficiency and electrification. We have talked a lot about renewable energy in this group. We've talked about solar. We've talked a little bit about both the Clean Energy Jobs Act and the Future Energy Jobs Act. And what we'd like to focus on today is actually reducing energy use, which is kind of the first step before committing to renewable energy. It's better to reduce the amount of energy you actually need so that you can size your systems appropriately. We also want to talk about electrification. There is a new movement that has been on both coasts, but less in the middle of the country, to reduce gas hookups in new construction and to convert things to all electric in order to decarbonize buildings more quickly. So we're going to learn about those things, those topics from some of our speakers today. And we are excited because Beth had already mentioned we've been able to expand a little bit geographically by going online. We've also been able to get some speakers who I don't think could have otherwise participated. So our first speaker is Sophia Mifsud from RMI, which was previously known as the Rocky Mountain Institute. And she's going to talk about electrification. And then we're going to go directly from her to Samarth Medakkar, who's from the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, and will talk about energy efficiency and also give us a little bit of background on the legislation in Illinois and what that means for us and how it will help with energy efficiency. And then from there, we're gonna talk about solar and engaging faith communities with Dan Huntsha from Faith in Place and Dave Wilms from Libertyville. And then we will do community reports. So I hope people will be able to stay on past 2 o'clock to report a little bit on what you're doing within your community. So let's just go right to Anna Sophia.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Before I get started, I want to make sure that I'm showing you the right screen. Give me a thumbs up if you're looking at the right thing. All right, awesome. Well, once again, thank you for having me. It's so great to be here with, wow, 54 participants from all sorts of communities. I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Anna Sophia. I work for RMI. For those of you that don't know us, we're an independent nonprofit organization focused on accelerating the energy transition away from fossil fuels towards one that is clean, prosperous, zero carbon future for all. I work on our carbon-free buildings team, which means that I'm focused on the emissions related to the places we live and we work. So I've been asked to do this lightning round of building electrification. I'll warn you that there's so much I could say about this topic, but we're gonna try to do a quick overview throughout the presentation, which I'm happy to provide afterwards. I've added a bunch of links that you can dig in for more information if you're interested. And I believe we have a couple minutes for question and answer at the end. So with that, knowing that we have a little bit of time to talk today, I'm going to focus on 3 things. First, why building electrification? Why are we even having this conversation? Second, what can you do in your municipality? And lastly, what can we do at the state level? And before I really dive into talking about why building electrification, I want to make sure that we're all clear on what we're even talking about when we talk about building sector emissions. So I'll describe here a little bit each of the different types of emissions that we're referring to when we talk about building decarbonization. So historically, we've thought about buildings emissions as those associated with our electricity consumption. That's why we buy LED light bulbs, why we buy Energy Star appliances, because we're trying to reduce our electricity consumption. And the emissions associated to that are in this category called indirect emissions. These indirect emissions we have done a great job at reducing over time. Another type of emission is this one over here called embodied carbon. This is the emissions associated with the construction of our buildings or the appliances in our buildings. And so this is a source of emission that we're just starting to understand how to reduce. But when we talk about building electrification, the source of emission that we're trying to tackle is this one here called direct emission. Direct emissions are the emissions from the fossil fuel combustion that we're doing inside our building. So it's what we're combusting, the emissions we're releasing directly in our buildings. And it's really important for us to talk about these direct emissions because historically it's something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about. We've made so much excellent progress, especially in Illinois. Congratulations to all of you that were involved in passing the CEJA legislation. But a lot of this focus has been on the electricity sector and adding renewables to the grid. But it's been harder to tackle these direct emissions from our buildings. And it is really important that we do so because especially in states like Illinois, they account for about 18% of Illinois' energy-related emissions. So that's a really big percentage of emissions. And when we look at fuel-specific consumption, such as gas, which we usually worry about gas consumption, fossil fuel in our power plants, but actually in Illinois, 62% of gas use is happening in our buildings. So this is a really big piece of the puzzle that we need to solve if we're serious about meeting our climate goals. And this is a problem not only when we zoom into Illinois, but also if we think about the country's ability to meet its climate goals. Illinois is the third highest consumer of gas in buildings in the United States, meaning that if we're going to meet our climate goals, not only do we need to tackle these sources of emissions, we specifically need to do it in Illinois effectively. So it's time to talk about these emissions, because if we don't, it's going to limit our abilities to meet our climate goals. But also, if we continue to invest in fossil fuel infrastructure, but at the same time try to meet our climate goals, we're going to perpetuate imprudent investments that are going to cost us a lot of money in the long term. And we're seeing this all over the United States and in Illinois. In the United States, a new gas customer is connected to the gas distribution system every minute. That means that it's just becoming harder and harder to move away from fossil fuels because we continue to invest in expanding the system. And we see this specifically in Illinois. In Illinois last year, the state legislature approved a $10 million subsidy to build a gas pipeline to a community called Pembroke Township, despite explicit and vocal opposition from many of the community members of this community. Maybe a little bit closer to home to many of you, Chicago is also has spent now several years investing in a pipeline replacement program that supposedly was intended to prevent leaks and ensure safety. However, they're now planning to spend nearly $11 billion on this program. And independent studies have shown that for 15th consecutive quarters since 2018, this project has been over budget, behind schedule, and the studies have shown no noticeable reduction in pipeline failures or reduction in leakage. So we're investing billions of dollars in a system that we're saying we need to move away from. So we need to limit our impact on climate. We need to make smart economic decisions if we're serious about meeting our climate goals. But we also need to take a hard look at how combusting fossil fuels in our buildings is affecting our health. And this graphic here shows a little bit about what I'm talking about when I say the sources of pollution in our home. But as you see, there are appliances that are combusting fossil fuels that are emitting things in our homes and outside our homes. And that's usually how I think about the health impacts of these of this fossil fuel combustion. I'll first talk about the indoor air quality issues, which is especially important because even before the pandemic, we spent up to 90% of our time indoors, which means that we have to, that the air quality in our buildings really matters because that's where we're spending a lot of time. And, for decades now, the EPA has demonstrated that indoor air pollutants may be 2 to 5 to as much as 100 times higher indoors than outdoors. This means that consistently in our homes, we are experiencing levels of pollution that would be illegal if they existed outdoors. And a lot of these sources of pollution are coming from unvented appliances in our homes, like gas stoves. A lot of our appliances that are vented to the outside are contributing to the health impacts of our community. This is a summary, and again, you can click to learn a little bit more about it here in the slide. But this recent study is a study that came out of Harvard. And what they found was that over the past decade, as our electricity system has moved away from coal generation, buildings are becoming one of the biggest sources of outdoor air pollution, contributing to ozone and particulate matter. And if you look at just the cost of premature deaths associated to fossil fuel combustion in buildings in Illinois, this would roughly be about a $12 billion expense that Illinois had to foot in 2017. So these are serious health consequences that are costing our communities a lot of money. Fortunately, we have solutions that we talk about to move away from these problems. The one that we usually talk about is building electrification. So building electrification, essentially what we're doing is substituting the appliances that would normally combust fossil fuels to a high efficiency electric equipment. So that's typically your furnace, your water heater, and your stove. And when we talk about this, I want to be clear that we're relying significantly on a technology called a heat pump. Now, a heat pump is a special type of technology that moves heat between the outside and the inside of your home. This means that it can actually be used for air conditioning and heating. And it also means that because it is not generating heat, but rather moving heat, it is extremely efficient. And this efficiency is really important because as the grid gets greener over time, this equipment is going to have significant emission savings over its lifetime. This graph, which I won't go over right now, but just to point out that we've done specific analysis on Illinois, especially with the recent passage of CEJA, to demonstrate that if you install a heat pump today with the existing grid in Illinois, you will see significant emission savings over the lifetime of that equipment. And you can read up more on this study here on this link. So what can you do in your municipality? There is a long list of things that you could do in your municipality, and I'm going to point out just a couple to get those wheels turning. I'm happy to talk more with some of you that might be interested in pursuing any of this. But when I think about action related to building decarbonization, I kind of split it into three different categories. The first is new construction. We need to make sure that any new building, any new investment that we're making is not going to make the problem worse. We need to make sure that we are future-proofing the investments that we're making. So tackling new construction is really important. But that's only a small fraction of the problem. And for many of you, you're really worried about these existing buildings. What are you going to do to retrofit all these buildings that already have existing infrastructure? And all of this is really only possible if you have a dependable ecosystem that is going to provide the services at a high quality at the prices that people need in order to make this transition happen. So all of these are really important types of things that you can do. And for a municipality, I'll just talk about a couple options. And I'll just point out that this is something that cities all over the United States are doing, even here in the Midwest. So I know that some municipalities in Illinois are able to have control over their own building codes. So one thing you can do, like Kim mentioned, is to ensure that the new building codes have some sort of preferential treatment for electrification. This could be making sure these homes are electric ready, electric preferred, or specifically mandating all electric buildings. For those of you that cannot control your own building codes. A lot of cities and municipalities have had success using zoning incentives as a way to drive electrification. And a lot of communities in Massachusetts, other cold weather climates have used this tactic to encourage electrification. There are cities that have prevented fossil fuel infrastructure from continuing to develop. And there are cities that are focused on building and rental performance standards. So this last one is focused on existing buildings, creating standards to ensure that over time, your existing building cohort is, whether it's rental or commercial or a mix of them, is becoming less and less polluting. The other things you can do to support the market transformation in your community is could be to create pilot projects, such as municipal buildings or other type of government buildings, or small decommissioning gas projects. Lots of cities are thinking about pruning the gas infrastructure in their communities where it's really expensive or it's very dangerous for one reason or another. You can provide voluntary heat pump adoption campaigns. The city of Ann Arbor has a really cool sticker campaign that I'm happy to talk more about that promotes heat pump adoption, provide incentives, or engage in other coalitions. And I'll just mention two, just so that you have in the back of your mind. There is a Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition that's open to advocates of different types interested in pursuing decarbonization in buildings. And within them, there are all sorts of working groups, and I lead one focused on health, the intersection between health and building decarbonization. If you're interested in joining those, let me know, and I can follow up with you. And then I'll just say quickly that there's a lot of state activity that's going on that could amplify your efforts around building decarbonization. With the recent SEJA legislation, now you've enabled the possibility of a stretch code. And this summer, there's going to be a process that is going to enable cities in Illinois to be able to pass a stretch code. It would be important to make sure that that stretch code has some electrification friendly language around them. Also, it's important that we're not forgetting about affordable housing and that we're ensuring that low income residents also have access to these technologies and these benefits. So getting engaged in the QAP process, that's the way that the state allocates funds to affordable housing, will be important. And then lastly, making sure that energy efficiency programs, which I think you'll hear a little bit more about in a couple minutes, are leveraging those utility funds towards electrification programs in your community. And you can advocate to the Regulatory Commission for a future of gas proceeding. These proceedings, there are over 10 of them all over the United States, including in Minnesota, that are looking at how are we going to both meet our state's climate goals while recognizing that we have utilities that are reliant on selling fossil fuel assets and figuring out how we can do that over time. So with that, I know I've gone a little bit over my time, Kim, so you can tell me how much time we have for questions. But thank you, and let me know if there's something I can help you with outside of this meeting.
Well, thank you. There's a couple of questions in the chat. I think we've got a few minutes for those questions. And I myself am really interested in this. I think that moving away from gas is just sort of a new approach in the Midwest, and I'm glad that there's options. So Jacqueline asked if you could address the effectiveness of heat pumps in cold weather.
Yes, I was sure someone was going to ask me that. So I have a slide here. Yeah, so a lot of people think that heat pumps don't work in cold climates because they haven't historically. The technology of heat pumps has increased incredibly over the last 10 years. So when we talk about heat pumps in cold weather climates, there are a couple things that people are especially worried about. First, it's about winter peaking. And they're thinking about a future in which every building is electrified. And they're thinking, you know, what happens in the coldest climates, in the coldest days of the year when everyone is consuming electricity? And this is a really important question that we need to address in our regulatory proceedings. But what analyses all over the United States have consistently found is that this is not a immediately concern until we get somewhere between 60 to 80% penetration of electrification, depending on the particular electricity infrastructure. And right now we're at less than 0.5% of penetration of heat pumps. So something we should definitely engage on and think about, but not yet a problem. However, the other big thing people worry about is the performance of these systems. And right now, cold weather heat pumps can operate without any backup up to negative 15 degrees. And I know some of you are making the mental calculation and are like, wait, but it gets colder where I live. And that's where we rely on backup. What a lot of cold weather climates have done has either been to provide electric resistance backup heating, or to maintain some of the fossil fuel infrastructure and have the fossil fuel infrastructure serve as a backup. I'm happy to talk more about this, but I'll just say that worldwide, the countries in the world that have the highest penetration of heat pumps is Scandinavia. So those are the coldest climates in the world, are also the ones that have the highest use of heat pumps. So it definitely is a technology that can work in cold weather climates.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple other questions. Let me ask both of them together so that you can, because we've got just another 3 minutes or so, so you can figure out timing between the two. One person has asked about defining the stretch code. Can you define the stretch code? The other question is about the what role the provisions for codes related to the International Energy Conservation Code for municipalities play in decarbonization. Stretch codes probably won't be possible until I think 2024 in Illinois. So this is Tim Milburn. So Tim maybe has to ask the question. What is the program that you referred to that might mean stretch code adoption earlier? And are there things within the existing code that make the electrification possible sooner?
Okay, great questions. So first, let me describe what a stretch code is. So in Illinois, for most cities, there is one code that the state sets that cities have to follow. Now, there are a couple exceptions. Some cities have special provisions that allow them to have their own building codes. So you would have to check in with your own municipality to figure out what's the case for you. But it used to be that there was only one code you could pick from if you weren't in that special group of cities. With the recent passing of CEJA, now there are going to be two options you have. You can pick the standard state code that has been approved at the statewide level, or you could pick a stretch code, which goes beyond, is more efficient than the statewide code. And I believe that the process for the stretch code begins this summer and goes for an entire year, so 2022, 2023. And I think you're right, Tim, that the adoption of that code won't be available until 2024. So that is, I'm saying Samarth nod his head slightly, so you can correct me if you know differently, but yeah, that's a bit a ways. And so what you can do in your municipality, if if you want to, get started on the process towards electrification, is to continue to develop that ecosystem of electrification providers through either zoning incentives or education campaigns. We've seen a lot of success with those in other cities in the country.
So this is Tim. Just to be clear, there isn't a workaround that would allow a municipality to apply an IECC stretch code now, but you're saying we should be looking at planning efforts and education efforts and getting the technology ready to go when the stretch codes are available.
That's right. So there definitely will be a stretch code that was passed in CEJA, but today you could not adopt a stretch code. You would have to, unless your town is your town or city is one of those select few that already have the authority to pass their own building code. And I understand that in Illinois, that's kind of a municipality by municipality case.
Yeah, I think Edith posted something in the chat that that expands on this question a little bit. I think that she says it's only Chicago that can establish its own code. I thought it was all home rule communities that could adopt their own code, but
I believe it's only for commercial buildings. Is the right now the current provision is for anything beyond the stretch code or beyond the IECC, the base code, which is not very green and is problematic. It's only on commercial, and we just don't. The municipalities haven't been doing it. It's a big uphill battle for
yeah,
municipalities.
So I want to just give one quick example of something that came up in Highland Park just this week. We got a complaint from somebody because we did adopt the new IECC, which was the 2018 version. That's the newest. And somebody had to go and get a building permit to replace their windows because the window standards are more efficient. And so our staff put in place a procedure that requires a building code for windows, which wasn't in place before, in order to make sure that the windows met the code. And we got a complaint from a resident because they had to go and get a building permit for new windows. So now there's discussion about whether we should change that and make it voluntary or do something differently. So that's the sort of pushback that may be happening in municipalities. But with that, I want to move on to Samarth, and I want to thank Anna Sophia. And I know you've got a busy day, so if you need to leave, we will understand. If you can stay, that's great too. But we really appreciate you presenting to the group today. And I want to hear more about the Ann Arbor heat pump campaign at some point in the future. And there's lots more questions in the chat as well that unfortunately we didn't get to. So Samarth Medakkar is with the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance and is working specifically in Illinois and the Midwest region. So it has more information about some of the local legislation ordinances that have passed more recently and how we can do energy efficiency in Illinois, what resources exist. So I will turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Kim. Appreciate the introduction and the invite to this meeting. Very excited to speak with you all. I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me one moment. Can you all confirm that you're able to see the presentation? Oh, I did not hit share. Here we go.
Yep, there it is.
Okay, great. Let's see. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Samarth Medakkar. I'm with the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, and very excited to speak about energy efficiency policies, programs, and some opportunities to engage following the passage of CEJA, but also generally. So I'm very excited to speak with you, and also thank you, Anna, for your presentation. That was really great, and should complement some of the information here. And in fact, probably provides a bit more of an illustrative aspect of some of the things that I'm going to point out. But first, a little bit about MIA, Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, for those of you who are not aware. So MIA is a collaborative network promoting energy efficiency to optimize energy generation, reduce consumption, create jobs, and decrease carbon emissions in all Midwest communities. So you can see our footprint on the right side there. So we're a membership-based nonprofit. We don't lobby, we don't We don't, intervene in regulatory cases because we have a membership that represents really the industry, the energy efficiency industry. So energy service companies and contractors, state and local governments, electric and gas utilities, academic and research institutions, as well as other organizations like some advocacy organizations as well. And so here at MIA, we're comprised of 3 teams. So I'm on the general policy team. On the general policy team, we track legislation at the state level, or policies at the state level rather. So activities with at utility regulators like commerce commissions or public service commissions, governor's offices, legislatures, of course, and then state energy office programs and activities. So we also have a buildings policy team, which focuses on a lot of the policies that Anna was discussing. And then we also have a programs team. So I'll be touching on some materials related to building policies and programs. But really our staff on those teams are the real experts in those areas. So with that, I just wanted to share the benefits of energy efficiency. And so we already discussed some of these, but this is how we like to convey the benefits of energy efficiency. And this is really what our policy team works to do in every possible opportunity. And so when we talk about energy efficiency, and many of you are probably aware of these, we're talking about 3 sectors primarily: residential buildings, commercial buildings, and industrial facilities or processes. And so we like to discuss benefits of energy efficiency as energy benefits and non-energy benefits. So for energy benefits, like Kim mentioned, right sizes the energy system, right sizes the grid, and right sizes our buildings by reducing overall energy demand. So by reducing building energy use, we can reduce the cost of energy and reduce the cost of adopting distributed energy resources like solar energy or batteries. And then you can also imagine that energy efficiency has a cumulative effect. Investments in efficiency has reduced the need for new investments in the energy system like power plants. And over time, energy efficiency is going to play a really key role in transitioning to a cleaner and modernized grid by reducing the cost for everyone of energy, and also reducing the cost of adopting these technologies. And also a vast majority of studies analyzing different decarbonization pathways say that energy efficiency is really an essential pathway. A lot of investment in energy efficiency is going to be critical for actually achieving decarbonized power sector. So related to that, another critical point we like to hit home is that currently energy efficiency is the lowest cost resource to meet demand in the Midwest, and it's the lowest cost resource in most Midwest states, if not all. And so what does that mean? Essentially, if you compare the cost of energy efficiency programs, so like programs that reduce consumption, and you compare those to traditional investments in infrastructure like meeting supply, so through coal or even solar and wind, energy efficiency programs come out as cheaper to meet future demand. And so this is another key point, that energy efficiency really is the most cost-effective opportunity for us to decarbonize right now, as well as to reduce energy consumption, really prime our grid for the transition that needs to happen for decarbonization. For non-energy benefits, we like to think of these as economic, environmental, and social or equity related. So energy efficiency, building improvements, improve indoor air quality, of course, and then improvements to the building, obviously aggregated, has an impact on reducing the need for burning more fossil fuels. So this has an outdoor air quality benefit, of course, and then obviously a benefit directly in those communities where these coal generation or fossil fuel generation can often be sited. For economic development, its contribution, energy efficiency's contribution is huge. It's the largest job sector of the clean energy economy currently, and there are jobs virtually in every county in the country. So, making folks aware that energy efficiency has such a large presence at the local level is extremely important. Let's see, there are local and obviously nationwide impacts, benefits that energy efficiency has. perhaps most importantly, energy efficiency improvements broadly, and then those targeted in marginalized communities are a key component to achieving equity. As we know, Black and Brown communities, rural communities, communities with low wealth generally have a disproportionately high energy burden, meaning they spend a greater amount of their income towards their energy bills. And they also generally have housing that's more inefficient. So reducing bills, improving housing quality, and facilitating reliable access to reliable and clean energy is really crucial. And then you can imagine that all of these benefits also have a human health impact as well, which can sometimes be hard to quantify. I think Anna gave us a lot of good tools to quantify these. There are a lot of tools that are trying to or can quantify these health benefits, but you can imagine that improved lower energy bills, cleaner housing, a decarbonized grid, good secure jobs, reduce stress, improve respiratory illnesses, and some of these other cascading health impacts of these issues. So I wanted to note these benefits. This is how we like to communicate these to our policymakers and other stakeholders, and it's really important, really an important thing to communicate the benefits of energy efficiency. So with that, a brief history on energy efficiency policy in Illinois. When we talk about energy efficiency policy, really the main driver of energy savings is energy efficiency resource standards or energy efficiency portfolio standards, and essentially their energy savings goals for utilities. So in Illinois, they established their energy efficiency resource standard for electric utilities in 2007, and then established them for gas utilities in 2009. And so when we talk about FEJA and CEJA, these amend the electric utility energy efficiency provisions. Specifically, they don't deal with the gas utility energy efficiency resource standards, but they made significant improvements to the electric utility provisions. So FEJA in particular, FEJA created a new structure. I'm sure some of you are aware, a new structure for utilities to meet their savings. A cumulative structure where they have annual goals that incrementally meet a cumulative saving target down the road. And then what CEJA did was extend this requirement, this savings requirement, this cumulative savings requirement in line with the decarbonization imperative for 2045 power sector decarbonization. So that's a brief history on energy efficiency policy in the state. And then for programs, I'm just going to touch on, a little bit here. FEJA, because FEJA was such a seminal policy in creating the energy efficiency, the robust investment that we see today in energy efficiency from the utilities. So the two main points really is that FEJA was a catalyst for low and moderate income programs. It really it really required utilities to shift more focus to these underserved sectors, these harder to reach communities and harder to reach customers. So after FEJA, utilities began running low-income programs where before DCEO was running these programs, and they also utilities also substantially expanded their programs for multifamily housing, a difficult sector to obviously deliver programs to because of the issue of a split incentive where property owners and renters the incentive is not aligned among the two to invest in energy efficiency. And so really laid the groundwork for improved programs for these for low and moderate income communities as well as renters. And then, as I mentioned, FEJA changed the structure of electric utility savings goals. So now they have cumulative goals, which accrue each year. And so now a brief overview of CEJA, and I know many of you, it seems like in a past meeting, have been given this sort of overview on CEJA. Just wanted to touch on some major points. Broadly, of course, it requires statewide, it creates a policy for statewide power sector decarbonization for target for 2045. And then it also includes pathways for BIPOC and EJ communities to access the benefits of the new clean energy economy. So most importantly, of course, through energy efficiency investments, targeted energy efficiency investments, which we'll see, but also workforce development opportunities which are important, I think, for this group and for everyone really to be aware of these opportunities and to share them. So some energy efficiency specific policy changes that CEJA made. It changed the electric energy efficiency standard to allow electrification. So now electric utilities are allowed to incentivize, provide incentives for customers to shift their gas appliance to an electric appliance, to an efficient electric appliance. There are some guardrails, or at least there are some limitations to how much electrification or fuel switching they can contribute, or they can claim savings for towards those annual and cumulative targets. But this does pave the way for energy efficiency programs now to facilitate electrification. It replaces the large customer exemption with the new framework so formerly in CEJA, large energy users, primarily are large energy users classified as those using with a greater demand of peak demand of 10 megawatts or more were exempt from participating in these energy efficiency programs. And so this was a major issue in the Ameren territory, where there are a lot of large energy users or industrials using greater than 10 megawatt peak demand. So this replaces that, where now industrial customers have to opt out. So probably opt out of programs at the start of the year. So probably less relevant for this group, but something to keep in mind, of course, because industrial energy efficiency is one of the largest opportunities for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and for reducing energy consumption generally. So while it didn't include industrials in the energy efficiency programs, it does create an opt-out. So there is now an opportunity for industrial customers or large energy customers to actually participate in these programs, whereas there was no opportunity before. Let's see. So it increases support for low-income programming and coordination of health and safety deferral issues. For those who aren't aware, health and safety issues are some of those issues with the structure of the buildings, structure of housing that prevents work from actually being done, whether because it's a health hazard for the actual contractors to go in and do the work, or just simply prevents the work from being done. These can be like faulty roofs, faulty wiring, or leaky roofs. And like mold, other issues that are really like a really significant issues to the health of the residents. But before, utilities would be forced to walk away from these properties because there would be these health and safety issues that they wouldn't be able to address before going in and do the energy efficiency work. So now there's dedicated funding for addressing these issues and reducing the amount of deferrals. So really a huge step towards addressing the issue of the difficulties for energy efficiency in the low-income sector. And then it requires that states, as we discussed, develop a statewide stretch code for municipalities to adopt voluntarily. So now a shift to just discussing the new utility programs. There's a lot in here, and it's a massive investment in energy efficiency that the 4 investor-owned utilities in the state have sort of applied to and were approved to do. One note is that so these programs were approved prior to the passage of CEJA. So all of last year was spent toward to negotiating what are in these new programs, designing the new programs. And so there was a big stakeholder engagement process where a lot of folks weighing into how these programs are going to look. And so that was approved by the Illinois Commerce Commission. These plans were approved. But after the passage of CEJA, there's some new policy changes that need to be taken into account and will impact these portfolios for these 4-year plans. So utilities are now in the process of adjusting their plans and refiling with the Illinois Commerce Commission. And then once those plans are refiled and approved, then the new programs will officially be taken into effect. But a lot of these changes will will continue. So some of these major changes in the new programs are an increased budget across all sectors, of course, a focus on whole home projects. And a quick note about whole home projects, I'm sure many of you are aware, but this is really a major step towards really using efficient use of the dollars that ratepayers are contributing towards programs, towards this portfolio, but also really achieving deeper energy savings. So through an energy assessment, homes, contractors will be more aware of all of the projects, all of the measures that can be taken in the home, and also, sort of walk the customers through, or walk the residents through all of the projects that are possible, the energy savings in them. And so this focus on whole home projects is really huge. Electrification measures, as I mentioned, electric utilities can incentivize adoption of electric appliances, replacing gas appliances, and then there's some new financing opportunities as well. So I really encourage everyone to, this presentation should be made available. If it isn't, I can send it, but take a look at the plans that were approved in the sectors that you find relevant, and see what changes there are, see what the utilities plan to deliver, and also visit their sites, because their sites have information on the programs that they're delivering, and share that with your community, share that with folks who might be interested. I think that one big takeaway from this presentation is really to be aware that these utility programs exist, because a lot of folks aren't aware of it. It's a rider on your bill. I think it's called the energy efficiency rider, or surcharge on people's electricity bills. So everyone's paying towards them, and we should be taking advantage of these programs. And so now just some specifics about some of these programs. I have an appendix in this presentation as well that includes additional information on the programs. But so for low-income programs in particular, the CEJA policy, and this is about CEJA. So moving away from the programs that were approved, and this is these are CEJA provisions required for low-income programs. So now there's a minimum annual spending and requirement level for Ameren and ComEd, but in their programs that were approved, they agreed to spend significantly more, I believe double, but perhaps more, on low-income programs. So a huge win through the negotiations, but also, obviously CEJA includes an emphasis on investment in low-income programs, which is why I increased the floor for investments. 80% of spending has to go towards whole buildings. So again, a major commitment towards deeper energy savings. Some of those measures that are more expensive, but are really going to show up on the bill, and also reduce emissions.
Samarth, I don't want to interrupt, but I want to make sure that we have time for questions, and we just have a few minutes.
Okay, great. Thanks for the time check. I'm going to, looks like this, I'll reiterate a lot of this stuff in the call to action slide. So we also talked about this, so I don't need to reiterate about new and existing buildings. And then, okay, so lastly, these opportunities and calls to action. So community engagement, of course, as I mentioned, raise awareness of energy efficiency in your community, that these utility programs exist, share resources on them, raise awareness of the commitments in the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus Climate Action Plan. I know someone from here is representing the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. I know many of you probably are very aware of this Climate Action Plan, but if folks in your community aren't, or folks in local government aren't aware of this Climate Action Plan, making folks aware of it, making sure that people are held accountable to it, is extremely important. If you're not part of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, then still talking about this Climate Action Plan is, I think, a significant opportunity. Talk about energy efficiency and solar together. We talked about how energy efficiency is the first step. So reducing energy consumption to lower the cost and improve reliability of solar distributed energy resources. And then speak to your local elected officials, of course, about the benefits of energy efficiency, jobs, and even visiting some projects can change minds about energy efficiency. And we have a lot of resources about energy efficiency benefits. RMI has resources on this. So there's a lot of organizations out there with great fact sheets and great messaging tools for that. Funding advocacy, advocate for funds to supplement existing programs and cover whole home projects. So perhaps your city can identify funds and creatively use funds to supplement the utility funds and projects that are performed in your community, or there can be dedicated funds for energy efficiency made available. And then also addressing health and safety issues if that's a big issue. And talk to us. We've got a lot of resources to support your efforts. Let's see. And then lastly, very quickly, advancing codes and performance standards. So as was mentioned, the CEJA stretch code targets are available for adoption now for the commercial buildings. So not for residential buildings, but for commercial buildings. This is an area I've got a lot of expertise in. So our codes team, our buildings team can really talk more about this opportunity, but I think greater advocacy and creating the environment for stretch codes to be adopted for commercial buildings as well as residential buildings is a key opportunity. So talking to some of those stakeholders like developers who are going to have an issue with this, but also advocating that your jurisdictions adopt the commercial building targets in CEJA is an opportunity. And then there's also an opportunity to advance some of these electrification or clean energy goals that would normally be done through a stretch code or an energy code can actually be done through an electricity code. So this was a point that our buildings team wanted to share with me, that EV charging, solar ready, storage ready, demand response, and electrification can all be done actually through an electricity code as well, in addition to some of those policies, local policies that Anna pointed to. So this is an opportunity that you can look at and also talk to us about. We might be able to support that. Be aware of the workforce development programs made available through CEJA and that the utilities are providing. And then there are two stakeholder groups that that are open for folks to be engaged in. It's the stakeholder advisory group, and then the income qualified accountability committees, the North Committee in particular, which is currently going a redesign process, but is going to be more accessible for community-based groups. So that's really the information. Looking forward to your questions, and let me know. Of course, my email's here, so feel free to reach out. Sorry for going over time there, but.
Well, thank you. Lot of information, so thank you. And interesting that EV ready and solar and storage can be addressed through the electricity code. I had not heard that. I know that there is a bill that's being heard in committee today that was introduced by Robin Gable, who is a frequent attendee of our meetings, regarding EV charging. It's bill, I think it's 3125 is the bill number, House Bill 3125. And if anybody wants to go to the ilga.gov website, they can file a witness slip in support of that bill moving forward, which would be helpful to get that done at the state level. That's EV readiness specifically. I don't see questions in the chat. If anyone has any questions, you can maybe unmute yourself and ask a question. We've got just a minute here, and then we've got to move on to the next speaker. Okay, everything was so clear that there are not questions. But Samarth, thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of that information. I know as we digest it, our communities will hopefully contact you to move forward.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for inviting me, and I'll share my email. Feel free to reach out about any questions. We can help direct you to other organizations or the right staff. So thanks, appreciate it.
I'm going to turn it over to Beth, who is going to introduce the next two speakers.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot of information, and many of our groups have not worked much in this area. So if, like me, you've never heard of a stretch code before and you don't really know where to start, that's okay. I think all of us feel that way, or many of us. In this particular area, it's something that community-based environmental groups can be advocates for, but a lot of this that we're talking about has to come through your village, through your environmental commission, the people that set your zoning and planning and building code rules. So it is an example that sometimes they're not going to be looking at that until community advocates start calling and email them to say, we'd like you to look at this. So don't be overwhelmed by it, but there are some ideas of things that you could do. For example, I just got the newsletter from Go Green Deerfield. They have a village-sponsored energy efficiency audit, energy audit that they're promoting through their village. What a great idea. That's something that each of our groups could go to our village to say, hey, energy efficiency is really important. We know you're interested in trying to reduce our carbon emissions. How about we partner with an energy audit? We'll promote it. You guys vet it and support it, and we could really make a difference together. So that's just one example. So I also always like to realize that we're working with homeowners and businesses, but there's a segment in all of our communities that's quite large, and that's the faith-based communities. In Wilmette alone, there's 30 different faith-based communities. Almost all of them have their own buildings, and they have congregations that pay attention to what their faith community is doing. And so I suggested that maybe we could add a small piece, a very quick piece about how you might be able to work with your faith communities in your organization or in your communities to see what they're doing, if they could promote energy efficiency, solar on their buildings, and to pass that enthusiasm along to their congregations. So we have two speakers who are going to speak on this topic very briefly, really speed dating version. The first is Dan Huntsha. He is with Faith in Place. If this is not an organization that you know, please put it on your radar screen and find out how you could partner with Faith in Place. And he'll tell you more about what he's doing. I've asked him to tell you about green teams at their faith communities, energy audits, how we can encourage them to do some energy and lighting retrofits to reduce their output, and especially whether there's any hope to get solar panels on top of church rooftops. So Dan, I'm sorry that we don't have much time for you, but if you could start your presentation, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me here today. Like Beth said, my name is Dan Huntsha. I'm the North and West Suburbs Outreach Director for Faith in Place. If you don't know who we are, we're a faith-based environmental nonprofit, and our mission is to empower Illinois people of all faiths to be leaders in caring for the earth, providing resources to educate, connect, and advocate for healthier communities. And we think it's important for people of faith to be in the environmental movement because we really put a lens on justice and how we can care for our common home together. We have offices in Chicago, Lake County. I'm in the North and West Suburbs. We have offices around Champaign, and then somebody way down in Southern Illinois. Our basic organizing model is to help houses of worship advance their environmental goals by starting green teams and working with a green team coach. A house of worship really can't have sustained action unless they have a green team, and then we act as a guide that can help them along the way. We've been doing this since 1999, so we have a lot of I say strategery sometimes of getting things done, how to get things done in a house of worship. I'm always kind of lighthearted, so I throw Fireside cartoons in here and there. This is a Fireside cartoon by Larson, and then I title it First Green Team and Early Experiments in Public Transportation. It's really, I think the real caption is experiments in transportation, early ones. Because often green teams, they want to try to reinvent the wheel. And then we say, hey, come work with us. We can help you start a green team and get you going in the direction that you need to go in a way that has less bumps maybe than you experience and maybe get there quicker. Because a lot of house of worship will come to us and say, hey, we just want to do solar right away. And then we say, hey, there's kind of a journey to get there. And then you can do many worthwhile things along the way that have impact in your house of worship and outside your house of worship. And then you will get to that goal of doing solar panels, but that can be sometimes a 1 to 2 year project. So we say it's really good to either start with forming a green team or refocusing your green team. And then there's a lot of things you can do along the way, like free energy level 1 audits, smart energy workshops, which I do a lot of, where we talk about a lot of things on ways people can save money, like with peak time rebates, hourly pricing, and then free energy things to get you going in energy efficiency. I don't know about you, but free is my favorite price point. So I really can appreciate that. And then along the way, people do get down the road to doing solar panels. So in our audits, we actually collapse the level 1, 2, and 3 into one audit where we bring partners along with us from that are trusted partners that do lighting work. And then so they get a report from us, and then they get a report from a lighting contractor at the same time that help define some scopes of work and get them going down the road, because why have one more meeting when you can have, you know, collapse that. And we also bring somebody that's a NICOR representative, so they can give them free things on the spot, like low flow shower heads if they have showers, faucet aerators, and then also hot water pipe installation. Because often houses of worship have trouble, you know, with their strategies, and we help define scopes of work. We help answer a lot of questions when it comes to audits. And one of the big thing that we really do is we define like what a group with their type of building should be focusing on. Because a building that was built way long ago in the early 1900s to 1950s or 1980s or 90s are very different buildings, and they should probably be focusing on different things. And we say the biggest winners are always if they focus on their lighting, hot water, and envelope sealing. We have a lot of success stories at Faith in Place with groups doing, whether it's the energy audits and retrofits or actually doing solar. There's many groups that do the traditional full direct purchase where they pay 100% of the cost and then own it from day one. There's a group recently, Our Savior's Lutheran Church in Arlington Heights, that did that. They had a really big project of over 100 kilowatts. For some groups though, like the cost can be prohibitive of doing a direct purchase. So it's really exciting that other groups do something like a power purchase agreement where they pay less upfront. The contractor that installed the system owns the system, and then for 7 years, and then there's a buyout. So for about $22,000, the $80,000 system that I put up there as an example is theirs after 7 years, which is a really great win. And there's many houses of worship like Hinsdale UU and Countryside UU and Palatine that have done this. And then there's other really cool programs, Solar for All and Illinois Shines, which I'll talk about in a minute. Solar for All is actually a free solar program, and I usually have to stress that a couple times that it's actually 100% free. It's income qualified, so if your income as an individual for your household is 80% of the median income for your county, you actually qualify for 100% free solar, no upfront costs, no anything. House of worship also qualify based on median income for the communities they serve, and also if they're an environmental, I say injustice or justice community, basically they're affected by local power plants or things like that. And then again, it's totally free, no upfront costs, and they only do that if an individual or a house of worship can save about 40 to 50% off their bills, because they're not going to put something on that's not going to help them save money. Illinois Shines is a community solar program and discount solar program for everybody, which I have another slide about that real quick. And then there's also, we have 10K Faith in Place grants from a generous donor. We have 2 of those per cycle, which runs from July 1st to June 30th. We have one house of worship that already took one this cycle, Yorkville Congregational UCC. And then we have another one that's close to doing that. So we'll probably have another 2 10K grants available to help a house of worship do solar in the coming cycle as well. Illinois Shines is a great way for people to sign up for community solar. There's no qualifying metrics, and it's discounted, and there's over 20 projects in Illinois that you can sign up for. So I highly recommend, if you want to do a community solar project, that Illinois Shines is a great place to go. And that's basically, you don't have the panels at all on your property, but you buy into like a community project. So if you want to take action, Beth asked me, like, what are the best ways to engage faith communities? We have a relationship built up with many houses of worship across the state. Like, we've worked with over 1,000 of them. And we currently have about about 100 or so green teams, 140, 150, something like that, where we say partner with us. We love to do presentations where we bring in other perspectives and other groups from the outside. And then since they already trust us, you know, we can bring you in and it's not that hard for you then to gain access. Also, if you focus on, hey, we want to help you save money, and our mission is we want to help, and especially in a justice manner. And then also we want to help the environment, which we all rely on. That's the type of messaging that people in a house of worship really grab onto. So if you want to work with them on your own, that's the type of messaging to focus on. In closing, I just want to say, if you want to take action in your in a house of worship, we can help you start a green team or refocus that green team. We can help you get a free energy audit. And if you're interested in Solar for All or Illinois Shines, there's the information to contact them on their websites. I remember that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you're a house of worship, we've been there, we've done it, and we can help you get there with less bumps and bruises and probably quicker than you can on your own. And there's my email if you want to contact me.
All right, thank you very much, Dan. Really appreciate that. If your environmental organization has not yet reached out to faith communities, one thing you might want to do is designate, if you have some great volunteers, designate one to be.
Uh-oh, Beth, you just froze.
And keep in, pardon?
You froze in the middle of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not frozen now anymore? So also remember that Faith in Place has a $10,000 grant for solar to keep in mind, and that there are some other options for paying for solar. We're going to hear a little bit more of that from our next speaker, who is Dave Wilms. However, I've got a special announcement from the Archdiocese of Chicago. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fit them on our agenda, but like Faith in Place, they are working with many different parishes within the Archdiocese to move toward a new creation care faith-based approach to protect the planet. This approach connects and intertwines all ministries, staff, and parishioners, and is involved with initiatives, education, and many different actions. And they are really focused on sustainability and justice themes. These goals have been developed and, of course, promoted very much by the Pope and Vatican. So if you have Catholic parishes in your community, and I suspect you do, we'd love for you to follow up with Cindy Kramer. She is with the Archdiocese of Chicago, and I will, when I'm not talking, I'll put her email, although she may still be with us, and she could put her information into the chat. So again, this would be a way for you to help engage Catholic parishes in your community toward earth-friendly initiatives like we've heard about with Faith in Place. And so with that, very quickly, I'd like to announce our next speaker. His name is Dave Wilms. Dave has been a friend of Go Green Illinois for many years and has been a speaker. He has been working for years to try to figure out how to get solar on the tops of non-residential buildings. He doesn't do homeowner solar. He does it for schools, churches, organizations, and we've given him like 6 minutes to tell you how you might take some of the experience that he's put in to figure out how you can take the next step in your community to get more solar on rooftops. As people have said, electrifying is terrific if we're not using coal for that electricity. We really need to be using more renewables. Dave Wilms has many, many years of experience. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dave to see how we can inspire us to take those next steps. Thank you, Dave.
Hi there, Beth and Kim. Thanks for asking me to join you folks. I think this is a choir that all understands that we need to do solar as soon as possible. And Dan had some great ideas and has a lot of success. And the Rocky Mountain Institute has helped us, and the MIA Institute is helping the Midwest move towards energy efficiency. My focus has been mostly on solar. I'm on the Sustained Libertyville Commission, and we're spending $55 million on stormwater upgrades. And so when I go to the village administrators and say, hey, how can we find some money for solar? They basically say, we can't use our money for solar. They're already trying to pay for the damage that climate issues have caused. So, and religious institutions are about the same. They're spending money on their missions, their projects, And, can they find much money for solar? And I've worked with probably 3 larger church groups, one of which I will go into in detail. But a lot of times there is not much money for solar within those institutions, especially if they're a wealthier congregation and can't qualify for some of the other grants. And so since they can't find money for solar, it's oftentimes kind of a tug of war over the funds. Schools, I taught at Stevenson High School, but a lot of schools are spending money on education. They're trying to deal with COVID, and they don't have much money for solar either. So that's really a problem. But we are a creative species, and we live in the most creative country. We all know that we have to do something, and there are solutions. Rand did a study over the last few years, and basically it was looking at putting solar on military bases, and they said it's just not in our best interest to pay for solar for those institutions when we can set up a public-private partnership and not spend any money and yet add solar to our bases. And we need to do the same thing in our municipalities, churches, and schools. We kind of need to grow the team. It's just not the team that's inside that institution or the dollars that are inside that institution. We can empower other people to help and reach out to some of those investors. And we can find the money if we really want to do solar, and we need to do something. When I started working in the world of solar with schools, I wrote 2 grants, $900,000 each for 2 schools in Libertyville. And there are a lot of schools that think that they're going to go out there and find some additional grants like these, but they're just very, very difficult to find. There was a church that wanted to put solar on its building, but the problem was that it was going to be about $100,000 system, and that was a little bit of a stretch for the budget of the church. So there were 2 parishioners that stepped forward, and they basically formed an LLC, and they bought the solar for the church. And between the tax incentives from the ITC and accelerated depreciation and the solar renewable energy credits and the inverter rebate, basically it didn't cost the church anything, and the investors are going to get their money in a very short period of time. And this is a rooftop picture of St. Michael's in Barrington, and it's a 40 kilowatt system, and you can look carefully there and see one of the people that is helping to install it. Another way to get solar is just have somebody donate it. We had a wealthy person here in Evanston reach out to the Audubon Mary Gray Bird Sanctuary in Indiana. He wanted to help them get solar. Basically, he ended up just donating the solar, but he got part of his money back from the grant or the tax breaks. And he thought it was a very good way to spend some of his money. So sometimes there are benevolent folks out there that are willing to move forward and do things. So this is kind of the meat of the session. Conclusion: most religious institutions, municipalities, schools, and non-for-profits shouldn't spend money on solar. Sure, if they have it, do it. But I've worked with a couple of churches. Each of them had about a $200,000 solar project that could be done. And here are the dollars and cents of comparing the 2 projects. If you do a PPA, which is when you have a tax liability investor help put the system on, versus just the non-for-profit that doesn't get tax breaks putting the system in. Basically, you have an inverter rebate that would be available to both types of investment. You have solar renewable energy credits, which also would qualify for both types of investment. But the federal tax rate of 26% and depreciation, both are only available to a business tax liability person. And what I think people really need to do is also look at the total incentives there. If you add up all the incentives, this is a $205,000 project, and you have $213,000 worth of incentives. You can make money doing solar just through the incentives. And so a non-for-profit, though, doesn't have that nice opportunity to make money. It's going to cost them about $92,000 more to do the solar project on their own. So I would rather see that $92,000, whether it's a church, community, school, spend that money on their mission projects and set up a partnership where they can take advantage of somebody else's tax liability. It's important to realize that not all PPAs are created the same. I've spent 3 years tracking down a finance company that has tax liability, and they actually share most of that benefit to the off-taker or the institution. We can cut electricity costs in half while you're paying off the solar. You don't spend a dime, and you can move forward. That's what we need to do. So that's basically it. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to help anybody.
Thank you, Dave. Go ahead and put any questions in the chat that you want to. Dave, if you could just, you might have to get back to some of these people directly. Couple things for people to realize that power purchase agreements, while they're complicated, this is how a lot of people are getting solar done. So that's a way to go. Finding people who really just want to help promote solar, they could be found. I know there was a church in Glencoe was able to raise in a month, raise the money that they needed for some solar panels on their roof. St. Peter and Paul, Greek Orthodox in Glenview. George Nassos has worked for years to come up with a way to put solar panels. He is pretty sure they're going to get put up there in 2022, which is exciting. Another thing that faith communities can do is to promote community solar. It's still a possibility in Illinois. They can get their electricity from community solar, but even more importantly, they can help introduce their congregants to community solar. It is important that we all try to see how we can promote solar in our communities. There is an annual solar tour promoted by the Illinois Solar Energy Association in September. And I'd like to propose now that you could help them by creating a mini local solar tour right in your community. Wilmette decided to do this, and we got 13 houses on the tour just because Go Green Wilmette reached out to people. Normally we have 1 or 2 on the ICEA tour, and we got 13 people in Wilmette to open their homes for solar tours. So that's something long-range planning. If you want to promote solar in your community on residential rooftops, highlighting other neighbors who are doing solar is really a great way to do that. So it's 2:25. With now we are going to move immediately to our community reports, which are an important way for us to share information between different communities.
Beth, I had an idea for this because I know that there are some people who weren't able to stay on the whole meeting today.
Right.
If people could just raise their virtual hand, 1 person per community to report, and then we will know who to call on for that community, I think it'll go faster.
Okay, fine. We did have people from 16 different communities register. They don't always want to speak. So if we don't see enough hands, we will call on you though. So also just want to mention that we did have a lot of, in addition to community groups, we had Lake County Forest Preserve signed, registered, Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, organization called Green Seal, Lakeshore LRS Recycles, Lake County Audubon. We have Robin Gable's office was represented in the Archdiocese of Chicago. These are all groups that would be happy to work with any of your community groups. So make sure that you take advantage of these connections and reach out to those groups if you see that you could work together. Okay, so
I've got one quick piece of late breaking news. Lake County Board today discussed a ban on open burning of yard waste for the unincorporated sections of the county, and that passed this morning.
Open burning of yard waste. Wow, that was still allowed, huh?
It was still allowed in unincorporated parts of Lake County. And thanks to some people in this group who submitted comments to the county board because they had not heard from people as of yesterday, except people opposed, they were able to pass it, so.
Okay, I see that Edith Macro would like to say something, and Dan Huntsha as well. Edith?
I think Edith said she has to leave.
Okay, Dan, you're just clapping. Okay, raise your hand if you all need, if anyone would like to give a report.
Okay, well, I see Highland Park, Deerfield, River Woods, Glen Ellen, Vernon Hills, Park Ridge.
With their hands up?
Now people are, no,
Okay.
they're on the call, but now people have put their hands up since we've called them out, right? George, what's happening in Deerfield?
Okay, yeah, thank you for giving me a minute. So in Deerfield, just a couple of quick things. First of all, we continue to promote community solar, of course, and we are part of the electricity aggregation program. So through that program with MC Squared, the village of Deerfield is saving about $60,000 a year on electricity costs for residential accounts. And that money is being used to buy wind, renewable energy certificates or wind RECs. And so the result of that will be approximately 50% of the electricity consumption from the residential part of Deerfield will become green. The other thing of note is that the village board has appointed a greenhouse gas reduction working group. And that group is meeting every couple of weeks. It's 7 members on that, and they are working to find other ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Deerfield, both in the residential side and on the commercial side.
Great, thanks. Jacqueline, what's happening in Glen Ellen?
Hi, everyone. We had a winter solstice walk in Glen Ellen. Someone in this group shared that idea on the last call and we copied it. So whoever that was, thank you so much for that. We had a great evening. A couple other things. We have an event coming up in February. We're going to be part of the Glen Ellen Park District's Winter Eco Lecture series. So we're joining some other organizations, and it's a great opportunity for us because we're still new. We're less than 6 months old. So it's our opportunity to introduce ourselves to the community and share a little bit about what Go Green Glen Ellen's all about, and hopefully get some more volunteers. Another thing that we're working on is we're working with the Glen Ellen Chamber of Commerce on a new resident welcome packet that they send out. Right now, it doesn't have any information about what kind of items are available for recycling or how to sign up for curbside composting or other environmental resources in the area. So we'll be working with the chamber to develop something that they can distribute to individuals who move to Glen Ellen. So that's about 500 people a year that we're hoping to reach with that. So that's kind of what's going on here. One question I have for this group, if anyone has worked with an organization called CDAC, the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center out of U of I, could you message me in the chat, because it's something we're looking at on the Glen Ellen Environmental Commission to try to get a sustainability plan here, and I'm curious if anyone's used them for that. Thank you.
Thanks. You may want to contact Edith, who's not on the call anymore, at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, Edith Macra.
Yes, good idea. Okay, thanks.
I'm sure she has worked with CDAC. I want to say that they presented to the Metro Mayor's Caucus at some point. Dudley had something for Glencoe. Dudley, you're on mute.
Yes, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good, okay. Just the 2 quick things from Glencoe. We were inspired by Highland Park to buy 2 new electric police cars. So our bolts will be delivered, I believe, a little later this month. And we're also, of course, doing a charging station for them as well. So thank you for serving as a leader for us in that area.
We don't have electric police cars. We have hybrids. So I'm gonna go back to our city manager and tell her that Glencoe is beating us.
Okay, well, these are bolts. Are they? Yeah, I believe they're electric.
For the police department?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention was we have discovered some links between the Historic Preservation Commission and sustainability. And of course, we know the greenest building already exists. And so we are looking at making some proposals to the board for a stronger historic preservation program, not only to preserve our culture, but to preserve and use that embodied energy in the building, and also do more resource recovery. And we'll be talking to the village board about that at our next board meeting, which is next week. So we're excited about those two items. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dudley. Liz, what's happening in Winnetka?
I want to give a report not specific to Winnetka. How about that? First, I'm going to put in the chat link to the to register for our next Go Green Reads meeting. We met last night and we had a wonderful discussion. And in March, we're going to discuss the Book of Hope by Jane Goodall and Douglas Abrams. It's Monday, March 14th, and the link is in the chat. Please join us and feel free to share the link with your groups. We meet virtually and will continue to meet virtually for the foreseeable future. And the second thing I want to report is a follow-up to our May meeting of this group. I helped coordinate presentations on composting. And one of the things I mentioned was that there was State Senator Laura Fine had introduced a resolution in the Illinois General Assembly to designate the first week of May as Compost Awareness Week in Illinois. And it would track the dates and the theme of International Compost Awareness Week, which is a US Composting Council initiative. And I had learned that California had passed a similar resolution in 2020. And I asked Senator Fine if she thought we could do something similar in Illinois. And she said yes, and a month later introduced a resolution. So that was spring of 2021. And I'm really pleased to announce two things. One, it was reintroduced on Monday as Senate Resolution 706 in Illinois. It's not on the ILGA website yet. It'll be on there tomorrow. So I'm giving you the heads up that I will be forwarding it to all of you so that we can support it. We can submit witness slips, reach out to your state legislators, I apologize, in support of the resolution. It is a pure educational awareness piece regarding the benefits of reducing and diverting food scraps and turning them into compost in the state. And the second thing to report on that is that the reason it was introduced as a resolution is because that would make it potentially easier to pass because it's limited to 1 year. When I asked the senator's chief of staff whether we could draft something such that it wouldn't be date or year specific, so that it would be in effect every year, he said, well, actually, that would make it a bill. That's why she didn't want to introduce it that way, but she likes the idea. And so basically in short order, she expects to introduce a Senate bill designating every week, the first week in May as Compost Awareness Week in Illinois. So assuming that gets filed in the next few weeks, I will follow up about that too. But these are real actions that we can take in our state to make a difference to move this initiative forward. Thanks. Thanks, Liz. Good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Lori, what's happening in Riverwoods?
Well, first, Happy New Year to everybody. It looks like the Riverwoods Preservation Council will be taking on the native plant sale, which has been going on now for several years in Riverwoods by another organization, but their leadership has changed and they may not be able to do it any longer. So I think RPC is going to take that on, and that will be in mid-May. We are looking into programs such as foraging in the woods for food and a fungi walk and some other things. Stay tuned for those. And finally, following Highland Park, I talked to the police chief in Riverwoods, and they will purchase hybrid police vehicles when the next round of purchases happen. And that's it.
Thanks. Seema.
I just thought I'll quickly recap the previous year and talk about some of the things that are happening this year. So last year we had a really good collaboration. We collaborated with the Sierra Club and Go Green Highland Park to convince Congressman Schneider to co-sponsor the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. We also collaborated with the Shedd Aquarium, the Chicago River, and Loyola School on Sustainability to have a panel discussion about the movie A Story of Plastics, and we had about over 80 people attend that discussion. Lincolnshire, after pushing for 2 years now, they have the residential food waste and organics pickup included in their new waste contract, which will start April of this year. Vernon Hills High School has started zero waste in their lunchroom, which we worked with them, and they started in August of last year. And coming up this year, we've heard from the Vernon Hills staff that they will recommend to the board to adopt the Greenest Region Compact, and that's going to happen in February this year. So hopefully they'll adopt the GRC too. Another thing we've been also pushing Vernon Hills is to do something in terms of renewable energy, and we recommended looking at community solar. What they've come back with is they're participating in a commission to look for opportunities to increase energy efficiency. We just heard that, so I'm not sure exactly what that entails. And lastly, we're working with the Coalition of Plastic Reduction to convince legislators on a bill that will put a statewide ban on styrofoam. So that's happening this year as well. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Jenny and Jay from Highland Park.
Hello, hello. Well, kind of a neat thing. Here in Highland Park, Deer Creek Racquet Club, our part of our park district, just got solar panels. And someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was a successful power purchase agreement that made that happen. So it's happening, real life right now. We have an awesome team headed up by Candace, who is on here too, working towards our wildlife habitat certification. We're going to try to do that for the whole city. And we're working with our League of Women Voters pretty closely on that. We're partnering up with them. Since I am married to an ICEA Solar Ambassador, in March, I have volunteered him to lead a webinar about home solar. And if any of the other Go Green groups want to team up with us, they can contact us at gghpinfo@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to team up with other people. I don't know if I'm kind of thinking about maybe looking at encouraging farmers markets to do plastic-free July. If you have experience with that, or if your farmers market does anything like that, again, same GGHP info, let me know. I'm hoping to get some talks about that soon, because it's a big, a big project maybe. And I think that's it from me. Oh, we also are trying to get year-round organics on our waste hauling contract. And I'm going to let Jay have 5 seconds to talk about ICF.
Yeah, real quick. Illinois Solar Education Association. We're looking for home solar owners who are interested in becoming solar ambassadors and doing talks to people, outreach events about home solar. So if that applies to you or anyone in your groups, you can contact us at
gghpinfo@gmail.com. I'll put that in the chat.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jenny and Jay are doing all things solar and electric vehicle in Highland Park, and even have a heat pump in their home. Sarah, what's happening in Northbrook?
Hi, everybody. So I just want to remind everybody that you can still throw out native plant seeds for stratification. You can just throw them right onto your snow. And we have a zero waste event that is being put on by our librarian. She's actually doing the presentation. That is coming up. And I just put the login information, or the registration information, but it's on Zoom, and that is on the 19th from 7 to 8 p.m. Then we also are discussing a book about Alexander von Humboldt, and that's January 25th. That's also with the library, and that book is amazing. It's Alexander von Humboldt's New World, called The Invention of Nature, and it's by Andrea Wolf. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Dave.
Hey there. Yes. Yes, I have one more thing to say. I'm working with some high school students from Highland Park. Why do they keep popping up anyway? Highland Park is just rocking. But anyway, they're working with some.
They have not put solar panels on the roof, even though they've been talking about it for 15 years.
I know the students are trying to work that project through too. But anyway, Highland Park students, Stevenson High School students, Libertyville High School students are all teaming together and trying to put together a big event at CLC on the 23rd of April, the day after Earth Day, to talk about climate solutions. And any other schools that would like to participate in the planning of this, you can reach out either to me. That's probably the simplest, or yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But I'll pass your name on to the Highland Park students that are working hard at getting this event put together. And the second thing is, the idea that a Bolt could be a police car, for those that have driven Bolts, that would be a fabulous police car. They're very efficient, low maintenance, and I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thanks. For those who don't know, somebody posted also in the chat about an event taking place tomorrow that Glencoe, Wilmette, Highland Park, many of the communities are partnering on, which is the Renewables event that I think Beth mentioned earlier. And all of these events are posted to the Go Green website, gogreenillinois.org. Cindy, are you Park Ridge? Okay.
Sorry, there was like a debate back and forth of who was going to represent Park Ridge. I won. We have great news. We have a new permeable parking lot in our library in Uptown, right in the middle of town. And it was completed by the end of the year last year. So the grant money didn't run out. And that was a long, long time coming, but that's great news. We're investigating a new native plant sale with help from Go Green Wilmette. So we're hoping to partner with Maine East and do that this spring. We're also hosting our second book discussion tonight. If you haven't read The Day the World Stopped Shopping, it will blow your mind. It's written by the guy who is credited with starting the slow foods movement, J.B. McKinnon. So this is our second one. So we're doing it quarterly with the library. And then our last but not least, our Sustainability Commission finally got seated. So this is the first time Park Ridge has had a Sustainability Commission. Thank you for clapping, Sarah. It was a huge win. I don't think we have a budget and we don't have a liaison with the city. So it's just we keep moving forward a little at a time, but it's a great update for us. So that's all.
Congratulations. That's great news. Beth, what's happening in Wilmette?
Okay, so Go Green Wilmette is going to continue with our webinar series. We did 17 webinars last year. We got a little carried away. We may limit to 12 this year, but the webinars are all posted to our YouTube channel. And if you guys are interested in doing that, it's very easy to create your own YouTube channel where you also could put webinars, meetings, and videos. Give you some idea, we've had 1,700 views of our webinars in addition to the people that signed on for them. And for our 5-minute sustainable yard tour videos, we've had 1,200 views of these short little videos we put on last summer. So that's actually doesn't cost a lot of money if you can find a pro bono videographer, which we were able to do. So we're going to do the webinar series. We're going to do one on eating for the earth. I'm interested. We already had solar for homeowners on the list, so we're going to partner with Go Green Highland Park if we can. Sustainable fashion, for that, we're going to be partnering with some high school students and some Northwestern students. So we're very excited about that. Keep in mind that we've got some really great, talented young students who would perhaps like to amplify their impact by partnering with your group. We're going to do a webinar on green feminine hygiene choices. This is a topic that is rarely covered, and we're going to do that this coming year. We're working with our park district to introduce the need for bird-friendly modifications to our lakefront park district buildings. bird-friendly issues are very important to many of us, certainly to the birds, and also to Donnie Dan, who may still be online here. We should not be building new glass-fronted buildings, especially along the Mississippi or the Lake Michigan Flyway without bird-friendly modifications.
I am. Thank you.
Yeah, we are having a styrofoam collection. We just finished it in Wilmette. I know some of your communities do this. Apt Electronics is incredibly generous to take our electronics that are generated by lots of other companies. They will take them for free and melt it down so it can be reused. Just a reminder, the leaf blower working group, thanks to our village manager and Highland Park's village manager, we are now have a working group. If your village government is not part of that, you should try to make sure that happens. And so that's about, also wanted to let you know that people in Arlington Heights, some of whom were on this meeting, they're interested in creating Go Green Arlington Heights. If you know someone in a suburb that is not represented in this group, it'd be a chance you could reach out to them to say, hey, this is what we do. We learn from each other, we copy each other, and we make more progress together. We'd love to see these community-based environmental groups continue to grow.
So,
right, that was short. Yeah.
I want to do two other quick things since we still have a couple of minutes. Somebody mentioned I think Cindy, that you're trying to get permeable, or you got permeable paving in your library parking lot. I'm trying to get our library to not build a parking lot. They have a parking lot currently, it's too small. They're right across the street from our train station, and there are parking lots, about 4 solid blocks of parking lot right across the street from the library, but people don't like to cross the street in Highland Park. So I have been trying to encourage them to use those parking lots, because the times of day that they need parking are weekends and evenings when the train station parking lots are completely empty. If anybody has ideas on how to push that in the right direction, I am open to help. The other thing, as long as I'm on train station parking lots, to mention is that there are some disturbing things going on the Union Pacific North Line, disagreements between the Union Pacific, they own the tracks and the land where the stations are located, and Metra, who runs the service. And I think many of our communities are on the UP North Line. So it may be worth kind of keeping an eye on what's going on. They just put something out that Union Pacific is trying to sell the land where the parking lots and the train stations are located on much of that line. So maybe keep an eye, take a look online as to what's going on between UP and Metra, because we want to make sure we keep our train service. Our next meeting date, Beth, I don't have it written down on my calendar.
I'll find it. All right, our next meeting will be on March 8th. That's International Women's Day, by the way. March 8th, 1 p.m. And Kim and I always appreciate your input. We want to make these meetings useful to all of you in your community. So contact us or put it in the chat if you have some ideas for our next meeting. Kim, do you want to mention what we are thinking of presenting in March?
Yeah, we were talking about habitat for March. We've got somebody from the Forest Preserve District who has been recommended as being a good speaker. So I think that is probably what we're looking at, maybe some pesticide, herbicide reduction types of things as well.
Yeah, one of the issues we might talk about is the growing proliferation of private backyard pesticide spray companies. If they haven't hit your suburb, they're coming soon. They convince people that what they spray is safe, and it's not. And so that's one of the things that we'll be talking about. Also probably talking with the North Shore Mosquito Abatement District. And and the proliferation of the native plant sales, which is fantastic. And if your community is not doing a native plant sale, it is a great way to not only increase the number of native plants in your community, but you could make money on it as well. It's really rather extraordinary. So if you're not doing that in their community, the demand is absolutely there. And we'd encourage you to look into that. Well, we always try to conclude early. I think we might actually do it this time. Unless there's someone else, speak up if there's someone else who wanted to say something.
Metropolitan, Metropolitan Mosquito Abatement.
North Shore Mosquito Abatement District.
So we also have, okay, well, that's.
I can't remember which communities that covers. Certainly not all of our communities. We'll reach out to the other ones as
Anyway,
well.
we had them come and speak to our Sustainability Commission, and apparently it was quite impressive, and they have great alternatives.
Yeah, they're the professionals, and they have all kinds of restraints and restrictions, and the private companies do not. And so it's really interesting. They're finding that environmental groups are really interested in their perspective, and the proliferation of private spraying companies is resulting in pesticide resistant mosquitoes, which is a huge problem for all of us.
Candace has raised her hand.
Okay.
Just really quickly, last time we had this meeting, I asked if it would be possible for you to save the chat when you close down the Zoom link, because there's so much good information in the chat, and I think it all goes away once the link is closed. Is that right?
Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, so we have to post it and put it in the minutes, or put the link into the minutes. So thank you for that reminder. And Kipstone, thank you very much for reminding me to record the meeting. It will be available on the Go Green Illinois website under resources. So you could come back on, and that's, I'm assuming, Kim, where the chat will be as well.
Yes, I will put in the chat.
Kudos to Kim and Beth. You guys always do a terrific job. Thank you so much for putting this together.
Well, it is great to look at all your faces and to realize we didn't know each other when this started, and yet we now have colleagues, like-minded colleagues, all over the north and northwest suburbs. So, and western. Don't want to let the western suburbs out either. So, thanks for all the great work that you do. Stay in touch, and hopefully, we will see most of you back in 2 months for our March meeting. All right, and with that,
thank you.
Have a great rest of the afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.